Once upon a time, in a land far away, lived a woman named Manoah and her husband. They longed for a child, but sadly Manoah's wife could not have children. One day an angel appeared before Manoah's wife. The angel brought amazing news. She would give birth to a son. This child would be special. He would be a Nazarite, dedicated to God from birth. He would grow up to be incredibly strong. He would save the Israelites from their enemies, the Philistines. The angel gave Manoah's wife specific instructions. "You must not drink wine or any strong drink," the angel said, "and you must not cut your son's hair. His strength will come from his special vow to God, symbolized by his long, uncut hair." Manoah's wife was overjoyed. She rushed to tell her husband the incredible news. Together, they thanked God for this miraculous blessing. They eagerly awaited the arrival of their son, their hearts filled with hope and expectation. Soon, their son was born. They named him Samson. True to the angel's words, Samson grew strong and powerful. He was unlike any other child. He was God's chosen warrior, destined for greatness. As Samson grew older, his incredible strength became more and more apparent. One day, Samson was walking to the land of the Philistines. Suddenly, a fierce lion roared and lunged at him. Samson, fearless and strong, grabbed the lion with his bare hands. He tore the beast apart, ripping it limb from limb. Such was the incredible power that surged through him. Later, Samson met a Philistine woman. He was smitten with her beauty and decided to marry her. This, however, displeased God. God had chosen Samson to deliver the Israelites, and marrying a Philistine woman went against his plan. Still, Samson was insistent. During the wedding feast, Samson decided to test his Philistine guests. He posed a riddle, promising them gifts if they could solve it within 7 days. Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet, Samson declared, his voice booming across the courtyard. The riddle, of course, referred to the lion he had slain and the honeycomb he had found inside its carcass. The Philistines were stumped. They couldn't figure out the answer to Samson's riddle. In desperation, they turned to Samson's new wife. "Trick your husband," they urged her. "Make him tell you the answer. If you don't, we will burn you and your father's house down." The young bride was terrified. She begged and pleaded with Samson until he finally gave in and revealed the answer. Triumphant, the Philistines presented the solution to Samson. They had won, but their victory was hollow, stolen through deceit. Samson was enraged. His own wife had betrayed him. He stormed off in a fury, his heart aflame with anger and hurt. He traveled to the nearby town of Ashkelon. There he killed 30 Philistine men, taking their clothes to give to those who had solved his riddle. Samson's rage, however, was far from quelled. He returned to his wife's home, intending to take her back, but he was too late. His wife's father, fearing Samson's wrath, had given her to another man. This final act of betrayal pushed Samson over the edge. He vowed revenge. He would make the Philistines pay for what they had done. Driven by grief and anger, Samson devised a cunning plan. He caught 300 foxes and tied burning torches to their tails. Then he released them into the Philistines' fields. The foxes, engulfed in flames, raced through the crops, setting fire to everything in their path. The Philistines' wheat fields, vineyards, and olive groves were utterly destroyed. The Philistines were furious. They knew Samson was responsible for the destruction. They sought revenge, burning down the house of Samson's wife and her father. This only fueled Samson's rage further. He was determined to make them pay. One day the Philistines found Samson hiding in a cave. They surrounded him, thinking they finally had him trapped. But they had underestimated Samson's strength. He grabbed the jawbone of a donkey, a simple, unlikely weapon. With God's power surging through him, Samson charged into the Philistine ranks. He swung the jawbone with incredible force, striking down Philistine after Philistine. 1,000 Philistines fell that day, their bodies strewn across the battlefield. Samson, exhausted but triumphant, stood victorious over the carnage. Section 5. The Allure of Delilah. Despite his victories, Samson was not invincible. He had a weakness: beautiful women. One day, Samson met a woman named Delilah in the valley of Sorek. Delilah was a Philistine, and she was the most beautiful woman Samson had ever seen. He was captivated by her charm and beauty. The Philistine rulers, aware of Samson's infatuation, saw an opportunity. They approached Delilah with a proposition. Find out the secret of Samson's strength, they told her. If you can deliver him into our hands, we will reward you handsomely. Delilah, tempted by the offer of wealth, agreed. She would use all her cunning and charm to uncover the secret of Samson's incredible strength. Delilah began to shower Samson with affection, all the while subtly prying for information. "Samson, my love," she would coo, her voice like honey. "Tell me, what is the secret of your great strength? What could be done to you to make you powerless?" At first, Samson refused to answer, but Delilah was persistent. Day after day she questioned him, chipping away at his resolve. She played on his emotions, pretending to be deeply in love with him. Section 6. The secret of Samson's strength. Samson, blinded by his infatuation, finally gave in. He revealed the secret of his strength. His hair, which had never been cut, was a symbol of his special vow to God. As long as his hair remained uncut, his incredible strength would remain. Delilah, seeing her opportunity, waited until Samson fell asleep. She called for a man to shave off the 7 braids of Samson's hair. With his hair gone, Samson was just like any other man. The Philistines, alerted by Delilah, stormed into the room and seized Samson. They tied him up with bronze chains, finally stripping him of his incredible strength. Blind and defeated, Samson was taken to Gaza, a Philistine city. There he was forced to work in a grinding mill, a shadow of his former mighty self. Section 7. A hero falls. Despite his capture and humiliation, Samson never lost his faith. He prayed to God, repenting for his sins and for allowing his pride and desire to cloud his judgment. He prayed for one last chance to fight against his enemies, to redeem himself in the eyes of God. Meanwhile, the Philistine lords were celebrating their victory over Samson. They held a great feast in the temple of their god, Dagon, offering sacrifices and rejoicing in their triumph. In their revelry, they called for Samson to be brought before them. They wanted to mock him, to revel in his downfall. They brought Samson into the temple, forcing him to entertain them. The temple was packed with people, Philistine lords and ladies filling the balconies. The air was thick with the smell of incense and the sound of drunken laughter. Samson, his eyes sightless but his heart filled with a newfound purpose, asked the boy who led him to let him rest against the 2 central pillars that supported the entire temple. Section 8. The final stand. As Samson leaned against the pillars, he felt a surge of strength returning to him. His hair, symbol of his vow to God, had grown back. He realized that God had heard his prayer, granting him one final opportunity to defeat his enemies. With a silent prayer to God, Samson pushed with all his might against the pillars. The temple shuddered. The Philistines, caught off guard, stopped their revelry, a wave of silence falling over the crowd. "Let me die with the Philistines," Samson roared, his voice echoing through the temple. The pillars buckled. The temple roof, unable to bear the weight, began to cave in. Stones crashed down, crushing those below. Screams filled the air as the once magnificent temple crumbled into dust. Section 9. A legacy of strength and redemption. Samson died that day, but not in vain. He died a hero, sacrificing himself to defeat the enemies of his people. He had redeemed himself, proving that even in his darkest hour, his faith and devotion to God never wavered. The Philistines, who had gathered to celebrate their victory, were crushed beneath the ruins of their own temple. Their reign of terror over the Israelites was finally over. Though Samson's life was marked by personal failings, he ultimately fulfilled his destiny. He taught us that even the strongest among us can fall prey to temptation, but more importantly, he showed us the power of redemption, proving that even in our darkest hour, faith and forgiveness can lead us back to the light. Samson's story is a tale of strength, courage, and ultimately, redemption. His name echoes through the ages, a reminder that even in death, one man's actions can change the course of history.